Imagine you are in the wilderness. You have been travelling for several days. On your back is a bag you have made, with some food and water that you've saved up. You've left your makeshift home as the seasons have begun to change. You have been watching the skies, and you are fairly confident that if you keep the big, still star on your right, you will be heading west. What did you watch for in the sky? The sky is ever-changing, and yet over time there are some reliable markers that seem to help. The sun. It's not hard to see in this vast open plain the directions of the sun. Every day it rises in one place, which is behind you now, and sets in another place, in front of you. It swings around to your side during the day, and seems to rise right above you in the middle of the day. This is when it is its warmest, and you need to find shade. Some days when there are clouds in the sky, your view of the sun is obscured, and it cools. Everything seems to follow this pattern of the sun. You had noticed the flowers respond to the sun, some opening and closing between night and day, and some following its direction. Some animals can only be found in the day, and others only come out at night. The sun wakes you up in the morning, and it gives you clear light to undertake any tasks that you need to do. But its heat means sometimes you try to do most of your travelling in the morning, or the evening, or at night. Sleeping at night seems to make sense. It is most comfortable then, and you are tired from the work of the day. Despite having some food and water saved up, you still must find more to replenish your supplies. Shading yourself from the sun seems very important. Without some shade, you find yourself needing to drink and eat more, and rest more. You have a hat you fashioned to keep the sun off your head when nothing else will suffice. It seems that the sun is both a help and a hindrance to you. The direct light is useful when you want to see, when you have tasks to do, but if you're not prepared for it, its full force on you can be harmful after a time. You must always be prepared and thinking about the sun, because during the day it seems to always watch you. It seems to set out a time for waking and a time for sleeping for everyone in the wilderness. The night is accompanied by a different light. The moon seems to follow a different pattern. It changes where it rises and sets each night, and it changes its shape slowly over the course of many days. Some days it's a great big circle, but then it gets smaller and smaller, until it is the shape of a crescent, and then it completely vanishes. Then it begins to grow again, until it is once again at its full circular shape. This seems to mark a series of weeks, and gives you a sense of a bigger span of time. Unlike the sun, you can look right at it, and you can see that it has marks on it. You've gazed up at the moon many times to try to understand what its markings are. Perhaps you can see a particular shape in its markings that give you a sense of its character. The sunlight is yellow gold and strong, but the moon gives a soft silvery blue light, which quite changes the appearances of things. The things which you know in the day display some other character in the night with the moon's light. Once you came to a small oasis of trees, which looked quite strange from afar. When you approached, the light of the moon gave the oasis and its water an unusual and beautiful appearance. Something was making noises in the wooded area, and you could not see what it was. In the morning the oasis looked like any other, and the creature was only small and harmless, but the moon had, it seemed, to make things quite strange, quite different at night, and put you on edge. There are other lights in the sky at night. They are small and cold. Some shine brighter than others. Unlike the moon, they are too small to see a face of any kind, and they seem completely made of light. If you take in the whole sky, you can see that some stars are closer together than others, and seem to move together over many nights. You've seen some stars that seem to be falling or running across the sky at incredible speeds, faster than a bird in flight. You do not know what this means. None have ever come down from their lofty place, but you imagine that one day one might land on the ground. The movement of these stars, like the sun and the moon, gives you an even larger marker for the days and nights, However, one star seems to never move, never seems to change. This star seems to be in the center of all the others as they process across the sky. With these guides, you can mark time quite well. You know it is 2 moons since you left your home. You know you are heading towards the setting sun. You know that you have enough food for 1 more moon, and that your water lasts another 3 sunsets or so. Traveling has other challenges. It means that every day there are changes. Some days you must pass over large rocky mounds. Other days there are no streams or plants. You notice that the land has changed several times, dry to damp to dry again. The damp land had water, but it had a bad smell and did not seem good for drinking. It was hard to camp there, and hard to walk through. You slowed down a lot during this. However, the ground there seemed good for your pot making, but you did not have time for that on your journey. In fact, when traveling, there is not much time for anything else than walking and resting. Once, as you were walking, you saw another man. He was dressed in strange clothes and looked quite different to you. He had something in his hand that looked like it was sharp, and he wore in his head the bones of some strange large animal you had not seen before. He seemed to be singing to himself. His strangeness meant you kept away from him, and you're not sure if he saw you. Another time, you saw a group of people walking in the opposite direction to you. You could not avoid their path, but you crouched and waited by a tree. As they came near, you kept your long, sharp stick low down, but nearby. There were women and children with several men. They all held various sharp objects, which they raised at first sight of you. But as they approached slowly, they seemed to lower them, seeing that you had lowered yours. The men you watched carefully. You showed them you had nothing in your hands, and you stood there for their passing. As they passed, you lowered your head, and they theirs. The children clung to their mother. It was a tense moment, and you were ready to act at any time. You have hunted large animals before, and you have chased away some with big teeth, but never been set upon by a group of men. As they spoke to each other as they passed, you did not understand them. One said a word to you, but you did not know its meaning. What would you say or do if they had wanted to talk? What if they had wanted to fight you and take your things? What if they were to come back in the night? Afterwards, you thought that next time, if you saw a group, you might offer some food to them to show that you meant no harm to them. But perhaps then they would want all your food. You play the dilemma in your head many times to prepare for another encounter. It was several sunsets since you'd had that meeting, and it made you wonder where the group was headed. Perhaps they know a place where the season is not changing. Perhaps you are set on the wrong course, and things are even worse than where you began. Without any way of knowing, you can either continue, turn around, or head another way. This idea plays in your mind at night as you try to sleep. Finally, you come to something new. You hear a great river ahead, gushing through the land. It has carved its way through great rocks and made a valley in the land. There are still plants and trees growing here that seem to bear fruit. You recognize some of them. Others will need to be tested. There are silvery water creatures moving that look good to eat if you catch them. They seem to go against the water and jump up in great numbers when they reach a step in the river. You find that you can catch just a few standing at the top of the waterfall. You find a nice grove to rest in. So dense, you hardly seem to need shelter. You wonder if this place too will change, but for now it seems as good a place as any to rest. What elements of this basic story can help us explore ideas in the Bible? Many of these concerns we have exploring our wilderness can help us unlock ideas there. The sun, the moon, and the stars, long and perilous journeys, making provisions for the future, and encounters with strangers. In Genesis, The sun and the moon are lights set by God to show us day and night, and the stars are fixed in the firmament to mark seasons. In our world with its technologies, it may seem hard to relate to some of these ideas. We have calendars and phones, alarms and notifications to remind us of the times we need to do things. But without these, it seems natural that we would look to what is around us to keep in mind the changes of time. With artificial light, we may only think partially about the sun and its influence, as we can create our own light and undertake tasks by their light. What rhythms are obscured by our world that we might find in the natural one? Also, in many stories of the Bible, a journey is necessary. Abraham undertakes a journey almost unimaginable in its time, going all the way from Ur to what is now Israel. What preparations must he have made? What did he bring with him? He did not travel alone. Thinking about the details of Abraham's journey may bring life to the story and give clues about his actions that otherwise seem obscure. Why, for example, does God come to Abraham so often when he is in the shade of trees? Is there a way to make sense of this, keeping in mind our story? Much of the Bible features the handling of encounters with strangers. They seem to offer both a danger and a help. If you want to preserve yourself, you may need to show that you are willing to fight, but this might also prompt a fight in otherwise peaceful people. You could offer your food. Perhaps they will reciprocate. Perhaps giving a little bit of food will stop all your food being taken, or perhaps it will prompt them to look for the rest of it. Maybe they would help you on your journey with information about the land if you can understand them. Are there characteristics of people that can indicate to you by looking at them whether they want to fight or be friends? Navigating this seems to be one of the largest problems of the Bible. When Abraham sees some men approaching him, he also sees God. This is a sign for him to host the men and offer them food. What if there had not been such a sign? Jacob fights a man who he encounters, but even after this, it seems there is potential for good to arise from the situation. There is so little detail in some of these encounters, but perhaps you can flesh out the story thinking simply about what must have happened and why. The sons of Jacob travel to a strange land, where their food sources fail. They encounter someone they believe to be a stranger with great power. How do they act towards him? And what care do they take to try to convince this man to help them? And what does he do in return? Moses and the Hebrews must pass through the desert to reach the land of his ancestors. They follow a great pillar of cloud in the day, and a pillar of fire at night. In the day, the cloud perhaps gives shade to them, and by night the fire gives light. Such strange events seem to solve many problems for them that prevent them from being lost or otherwise harmed. What might they have done had they not had these great markers to show them? What strange sign would you be willing to follow into a new land, and why? Perhaps such events are so strange to us, who make our own light and shade, that we cannot imagine ever undertaking such a venture. But imagine how such a thing must have seemed to them. How do you know what to follow as your guide in the wilderness? Thank you for watching. Once again, if I get 1 like on this video, I will make another. If you have thoughts or questions on what might happen in the story, let me know and I can include it in the next one.